All
We
right,
are
good.
good to go. Thank you
All
so
right,
much
thank
for
you.
being here, everyone. Welcome to
Yes,
the RSC and welcome, Dr. Rivera. Welcome back. And we are very happy to hear from you again. And this has been a very exciting series, and you can take it away.
all right, thank you. And thank you for inviting me, Shoshana. I really appreciate the opportunity. So this will be the third of three RSC presentations by me, anyways, on book publishing. So I guess I could just go ahead and share the screen and start the PowerPoint, and I'll talk about myself at first, then I'll talk about briefly summarize the previous two sessions, and then go into this session, which is about evaluating book contracts. So let me share the screen. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. Do you see beautiful rolling green hills right now? And then a PowerPoint. Um, okay, does everyone see the PowerPoint? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for
That's great.
chiming
Thank
in. I
you.
appreciate it. All right, so as we proceed, feel free to type questions in the chat window if I happen to see them. I don't know how well I'll see them when I'm looking at the PowerPoint, but if I do see them, I'll respond as we go along the way, but at the least they'll be there and we can discuss them at the end. All right, so first I'm going to talk about myself. I've been working at Keiser University since October of 2019. I've been working in higher ed, since January of 2000, so 25 years. Um, I got married when I was 19. I started working as an electrician. I started college in 1987 while working full time and raising a family. I earned an Associate of Arts degree from Valencia Community College and a BA from Rollins. And I started publishing poems in small literary journals around 1989. I may have some before then, I'm not sure. In the mid 90s, mid to late 90s, after I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I did a lot of freelance writing while I was working as an electrician. I earned about 3 to 5 thousand a year. And then in 1999, I realized I had to either get a master's license as an electrician and start my own business or go to grad school. So I chose to go to grad school. I started in 1999. I graduated from Drew University in New Jersey with my PhD in 2008. I started working as the administrative assistant for the director of financial aid in January of 2000, I think. And then they kind of moved me around as the administrative assistant for the vice president of enrollment management. And they made me coordinator of enrollment services and just kind of went on from there. I turned my dissertation into my first book, Blake and Kierkegaard, Creation and Anxiety. That was published by Continuum in 2010. Right now, it's in over 1,600 libraries worldwide, and it has been reviewed a few times. Other books include David Bowie and Romanticism, published by Palgrave Macmillan in 2022, Women in Rock and Women in Romanticism, published by Routledge in 2022. I did not intend those to come out the same year. Maybe if you have time, we'll talk about how that worked out. Writing for College and Beyond is my only self-published book, Lulu Press. It's a first-year writing textbook. Reading is Democracy in Crisis, Interpretation, Theory, History, Lexington Books, 2019. That's an imprint of Rowman and Littlefield. Rock and Romanticism, Blake Wordsworth and Rock from Dylan to U2, Lexington Books, 2018. Rock and Romanticism, Post-Punk, Goth, and Metal is Dark Romanticisms, Palgrave Macmillan, 2018. Again, I did not intend for this both to be published the same year. Anyways, my total publishing history to date includes 7 books, 1 monograph, 1 textbook, 5 anthologies as the editor, 3 digital humanities projects, about 20 articles in online magazines and other new media. 8 articles or book chapters, not including my own anthologies, 33 book reviews or annotations, 4 exhibits in mixed media. I contribute poetry to those. About 30 poems, 2 creative nonfiction works, 3 short stories, I've done editing and peer reviewing for academic presses. I've done some ghostwriting for commercial publishers, and I've done 4 invited talks and 34 conference papers, probably more at this point. I don't know. So this is the third session. In the first session, I talked about researching a book. I'm going to summarize that in about 2 slides. Your book starts above all else with an idea of your own. You most likely develop this idea in response to reading other books, articles, essays, or other works. So you start your research for your own book with the books that are closest to your idea in terms of content. Okay. After identifying the most important books that are close to your idea, find the most recent books that fit. So to research a book, you want to have an idea. You want to read the books about that topic already available, preferably within the last 10 years. You think about what you really have to contribute to the discussion at that point. What are the distinguishing characteristics of your work compared to the other books out there? And then you identify the publishers who are publishing in the area of your book. So what I would like to emphasize is that the research you do to write your book is also market research for your book when it comes out, and market research for the publishers and who you're going to pitch your book to. Now, in session 2, I talked about writing a book proposal. This window's bugging me. Um, uh, a very abbreviated version of what I said. Read the instructions for the book proposal, follow them, and write well. um, there's more to it than that. It did actually take up the entire session, but that's session 2. And hopefully when these are published online, you can review that if you're interested. So, and then after that, I reviewed common instructions, what they usually want for a book proposal. Um, so moving forward, this session is going to be about assessing academic book contracts. So this is what happens after you've written your proposal, you've sent it to a publisher, the publisher offers you a contract. You need to understand if you haven't been through this process, what the academic book contract means. It does demonstrate the publisher's favorable view of your book proposal, and it demonstrates confidence in your ability to deliver a well-written book about the topic of your choice, and it demonstrates the publisher's confidence in the market for your book. So that means they believe that they can sell it. And we'll talk about what sales for academic books actually mean. um, but what it doesn't mean, a contract is not a guarantee of publication. Um, a contract's like the publisher saying, if you sign this, if you publish this book, we get first dibs. That's all it means. They still have the right to not publish it, even though they offer you a contract for it. Just like most publishers, especially academic publishers, will send your proposal out for peer review, most publishers will also send your completed manuscript out for peer review. So you have to pass peer review at both stages to get actually published. So future publication depends upon the peer review report and your ability to respond to it. Generally, if you're not familiar with the peer review process, I don't know anybody's experience, but they'll send it out to 2 people with expertise in the field of your book. The peer reviewers will send back a reader report. The bottom line on the reader report will be, yes, you should publish it, no, you shouldn't, or yes, you should publish it with these changes. And you'll usually get feedback chapter by chapter, especially with the completed book. Okay. You actually don't have to agree with the peer reviewers, but you do have to be able to respond to them. You want to keep in mind that peer reviewers are very busy working academics. They're usually working at a college or university. They're teaching courses. They're publishing themselves. So they're reading a lot. And then they have to evaluate your manuscript on their first read, basically, and then send off their recommendation to the publisher. And when we do that, we do get paid. We usually get paid in copies of books published by the publisher. So like the last time I did this, I was offered $300 worth of books by the publisher who had me peer review the book, the book manuscript. And if you know academic books, that's like 2 or 3 books, right? So, and I thought it was a good deal. Such a sucker. Um, but you don't have to agree with your peer reviewers. You don't want to be hostile, but if you got to remember, whatever they're writing is probably based on one reading of the manuscript, and that's it, their first impression. Okay. And book reviews after it's published, the same thing. Everybody's too busy to read any book multiple times. Um, So you should feel welcome to disagree respectfully and professionally, and you still want to take peer review comments seriously. If you feel they misunderstood, these are generally smart and educated people. You want to ask yourself why and what you can do to make, that point clearer. Um, and I have to tell you, in my experience publishing, I've come to very highly value the peer review process. Um, I'm grateful for it. I quite often get very good, very useful feedback, and sometimes it's things I knew I had to revise but just hadn't yet. Quite often it is. I have had a couple of bad peer reviewers that demonstrated kind of awful biases. Like the Women in Rock book, oh, Marianne Faithfull couldn't possibly have been reading Patti Smith. She wanted to be a philosophy major at Stanford. Very smart woman. So that kind of assumption is discouraging. But I was quite able to argue with that. And Patti Smith was president of the Blake Society, the William Blake Society in the UK one year. So, anyways, but except for a couple of experiences, I've come to be very grateful for the peer review process. I feel like it always makes my work better. So the question is, once it goes through peer review, and once the publisher um, um, asks you if you want to sign the contract, offers you a contract, it'll usually be by DocuSign. The question is to sign or not to sign. Um, so I'm going to review key features of different book contracts that I've been offered in the past. I didn't accept all of these. And these are just the ones I could find. I mean, some of this goes back, I don't know, almost 20 years now. So I wasn't able to find all of the ones I've been offered, but um, sorry. But I was able to review several of them for this presentation. So, and this review will lead to a general statement about key features to evaluate in any academic book contract. And it can also help you manage your expectations from different publishers, keeping in mind that different fields and different presses may offer different terms and pay structures. All right, so I'm talking about the different publishers within the humanities who have offered me contracts. I don't know what academic publishing in the field of business or IT or criminal justice. I don't know what those contract structures are like. Because I would never write in those fields, and I don't I've never been offered a contract. So I'm not going to mention specific publisher names either, as whatever contract terms are coming out with now may be different from any contract offers, they might, even the same publisher might offer you in the future. So, I don't think it really matters who the publisher is because, the idea is to kind of know what to expect, I think. So publisher number one, pretty much what all the publishers get are sole exclusive rights to publish the author's work in all possible forms. So, and it's a promise from the author not to publish substantially competing works. That a substantially competing work is not a work about the same topic. It's a work that says very similar things about the same topic. In other words, it's a book that might replace the book you've already published. So if you want to do a replacement book, that's a second edition with the same publisher, which you could probably pitch. You could, send in a proposal and make an argument for another edition coming out. Okay. But if you write a different book about the same topic, presenting a different argument, you should feel free to go to any publisher you want. I mean, you can see that four of my four of my last books were about music and literature, but they're all very different. One was about Bowie, one was about women in rock, one was about Blake Wordsworth and rock from Dylan to U2, and the other one was about it was more along the Gothic and dark romanticism side, and brought in more heavy metal and genres like that. Um, so I have four books on the same topic, general topic, music and literature, but they're all very different. They're not in any way competing. Um, so this publisher was interesting. This publisher, I have two books with them, and they made a one-time payment. The last one was $815. Now, if they were to republish chapters in other venues, I would get a little bit of money for that too. And that happened at least once. But otherwise, they pay me once for the book. That's my total royalty fee. I own the copyright. I got like 6 copies of the completed book. And this contract allows me to republish as much as one chapter elsewhere. I have permission to do that. Um, the cover image, uh, one thing, maybe I should get to this. I'll save that to the end. If I forget, just somebody ask me. Publisher number two, again, sole exclusive rights, don't publish substantially competing works. This one pays 2.5% royalties, and they pay twice yearly. Every other publisher I've worked with that paid me royalties, I only got a check once a year, usually sometime around the summer. And again, copyright, I have the copyright. I got about 6 copies. And again, I'm allowed to republish as much as one chapter. Um, Publisher two, the publisher gets kind of the same things. I got 2.75% royalties paid annually, and they co-own the book with me. Okay, is shared equally by the author and publisher initially. Okay, the contract stipulated that I get 100% ownership if they don't publish it in paperback within 5 years. And that book came out in paperback probably less than a year or about a year. And I got copies of both the hardcover and the trade paper. And I tried to publish a chapter on a website, and I was told I had to pay $500 for that. So they weren't quite as generous as letting me republish any part of my book. Um, and we're going to talk about what these royalties mean. This is one of the ones I turned down. Again, the same things. 10% royalties are paid annually after 500 copies are sold. And then after 5 years, the publisher owns the book completely. I don't have any more rights to it. And I get a few copies of the completed book. I don't know if it's 5 or 6 with everyone, but they're all about 5 or 6. Now, you want to know most academic books, like monographs or anthologies. I'm not talking about textbooks, those are different things. They sell about 300 to 500 copies. So that means I would probably never see a dime. It's not like you're going to be making a lot of money either. I mean, to begin with, and we were just talking about this before the meeting started. Um, but this would be like zero money. I mean, I get 10%, which is a pretty high royalty rate, but they have to sell 500 copies first. And the odds that it'll sell 500 copies in 5 years are pretty slim. And that 5 year mark seems to be consistent with publishers because the latest scholarship is what people want. And interest in your book certainly drops off after 5 years, if not before then. So they say that because they don't expect to sell much after 5 years. Um, all right, so looking at this information, questions that you want to ask about every book contract. Who owns the book for how long, under what conditions? Do you continue to own your work? or are you giving it away forever? Now, depending on the rest of the contract, you and the nature of the book, you might be willing to give it away forever. I don't know. I wasn't really comfortable doing that with anything I had written. Um, in other areas of publishing, say creative writing, poetry, they ask for first rights. They want the first rights to publish it. Um, and then after they published it, you can republish with acknowledgement. Okay. And then you want to ask about the pay structure. Is it one time or do you get paid royalties? So you want to keep in mind that academic books are very expensive because they're designed to last for years on library shelves. So they have acid-free paper, a library binding, the cover image is printed on the cover, and this all adds up to high production costs with low sales numbers. Okay. Payments probably vary for ebooks if I recall the details of the contracts, and they may vary for trade paper. The initial publication of any academic book will be in hardcover. So my first book paid 2.75% royalties on a book that costs $110. That meant about $3 per book. Okay. Um, so like the first couple years, I got checks for like 50, $60. All right, so every summer when I got my royalty check, my wife and I would go out to dinner, and the royalty check would cover the dinner, and we still have to pay out of pocket for the sitter. So we were losing money there. You don't get rich publishing academic studies. Again, textbooks are an entirely other thing. But academic studies, no. So for this book, okay, I still get this book came out in 2010. So it's 15 years ago. I still get a royalty statement every year. And this publisher doesn't pay out unless they'll send you a check that's at least $50, okay? So my current royalties are stuck at $47. Year after year after year, I get the statement saying, yeah, you've got $47 waiting here. So if any of you would like to buy a copy of my book and bump me up to that $50 threshold, that'd be great. Or maybe ask your library somewhere to buy a copy. Um, Blake and Kierkegaard, Creation and Anxiety, Bloomsbury. So the pay structure for these academic books, because they're low sales and high cost, you don't get a lot of money for it. I'm friends with a professor at Rutgers named Jack Lynch, and he loves to post screenshots or pictures of his royalty statements. He's published a lot more than I have. Okay, State University system. He's got to have a lot of books out there, and he publishes in my field. Though, that's how I know him. And he posted a photograph of a royalty check for 93 cents. He thinks it's hilarious. Um, so you don't publish academic studies to make money, okay? You just need to know that. You publish them hopefully because they're part of your job. They'll gain you recognition at work and professionally, and that will lead to hopefully raises and promotions. That's how you make money from academic publishing. The questions that you want to ask about every book contract, what's the publisher's reputation? So go to worldcat.org, that's World Catalog. It searches the entire world's college and university libraries for holdings. Okay. So search for title holdings by publisher. All right. So my first publisher, Continuum, they were located in the UK and they were connected around the world. And as of right now, I have 1,600 copies of that book in different libraries. Many of them are probably electronic and shared resources among libraries. So I didn't get paid for 600 copies. I promise 1,600 copies. I promise that. But they gave me very wide exposure, very good. So you go to worldcat.org and say you want to publish for, with this one publisher, you find a title in the area that you want to publish with them. You're thinking about publishing with them in. And you search that title and see how many libraries it's in. If the title is like 5 years old and it's in about 120 libraries, that's not great. Okay. If it's about 5 years old and it's in about 300 to 500 libraries, that's average. That's good. If it's in substantially more than 500 libraries, that's where you want to go. That'll give you the most exposure. Um, uh, Let me think. Where's I going next with this? Okay, I don't know. Let me move on. What marketing does a contract promise? Um, academic publishers are working on pretty narrow profit margins, I think. That's the impression I get. If you publish with a university press, they're actually nonprofits. Um, they will provide some marketing support, but it won't be a lot. I mean, you'll have a listing in their catalog. You'll show up on their book table, hopefully, at conferences, especially if you show up, academic conferences. And then they will expect you to do marketing and promotion for your own book. They like potential authors who have a large social media presence. Okay, they will expect you to market your own book. Um, One of the best ways to market an academic book is to have it reviewed by Choice Magazine. Choice Magazine is the book review magazine that librarians use. Okay, very short reviews, like 100 words per book. And it's just designed to tell a librarian, yes, you want this on your shelf. I don't know, it depends, or no. Okay, I got a great review in Choice Magazine for that first book. So, uh, one thing you can do is request review copies to be sent to certain magazines. They might automatically do it. You need to talk to your editor at the publishing house. With certain publishers, but if there are, I mean, with certain, review outlets, but if there are academic journals that you really want to have look at your book, you might ask them, get the review editor's name and email address, and ask to have a copy sent to that. All right, that academic book reviews are a good way to sell to university libraries because faculty members read and write them, and uh, and they base the requests they make every year for books for the library partially on that. And you can enter book contests as well. You can ask your publisher to send, usually the contest will ask for 2 or 3 copies to be sent. You can ask your publisher to do that. Um, and as you're researching different publishers, check out the cost of similar titles. If their books are really low cost, that may not be a good sign. That can denote a low quality product in terms of the material qualities of their books, like binding and paper and things like that. So, a friend of mine was offered a contract with a pretty good publisher. I think it was Macmillan. No, it wasn't Macmillan. It sounded like Macmillan. I don't remember who it was right now off the top of my head. And she wanted to quote a kind of lengthy paragraph from a Toni Morrison novel. And the Morrison, she had to ask for permission, and the Morrison estate said, "Yeah, we'll publish it for $500." Well, I mean, she wasn't going to make that much from the book, right? So she said no. And the publisher wouldn't publish her book with that large a quotation without permission. So she went to a different publisher, and I'm going to tell you the name, Cambridge Scholars Press. They did not require her to get permissions for that length of a quotation. Okay. So she was able to publish a book in the form that she wanted with that publisher, but the physical quality of the book was very low. Instead of having the image imprinted on the cover, it actually had a dust jacket. I mean, librarians just throw those out, because they don't hold up. Um, and they'll stamp the title and author name on if it's not already on the cover, they will. Um, and you could tell the book was not on acid-free paper. It wasn't in a library binding. It looked like it'd fall apart if you read it a couple of times. Um, and some of the text was a little bit like off center or skewed. Very low quality work, but it was cheap as well. It was probably in the $30 range instead of the $100 range. Um, she made that decision before I got to her. There was nothing I could do. But I told her, if that happens again, just cut down the length of the quotation, go below the threshold where you'll need rights. Um, but don't leave a good publisher for a bad one. Okay. And the thing is that the content of her book was very high quality. That's why she got that other contract. She just didn't, in my opinion, she didn't exercise very good judgment by switching publishers for that reason. Um, let me think, what else? Oh, I was going to talk about the covers. If you want to provide a cover image, unless you create the image yourself, you're going to have to pay an artist to do that. And standard royalties for an artist for you to use their their image on your cover is 10% of your royalties. Okay. So I had an artist, I had a photographer. I had this young woman. She was a teenager when I met her, but she was taking incredible rock photography around Ohio. Her rock photography was so good, it gave me the idea for an exhibit on rock and roll in Ohio for the university library, what university I was teaching at the time. So we got three or four other photographers, and I think three others in hers. And we staged, myself and the director of the university gallery staged an exhibit. I just loved her work. It was amazing. So I used two of her images on two of my rock books. Um, and I got that's a fixed fee publisher, and I was getting paid about $800 each time. I said, look, I'm only going to get this one-time payment of $800. I'm going to pay you 10% of my royalties. So I gave her a check of $100 for each one. And then I've never given her anything else because I didn't get any other pay for it. Um, but her name's in the book and her picture's on the cover. She's getting some exposure there, and she appreciated it. It was a confidence boost for her too. I had my daughter do one. And it was the same kind of thing. That book was on literary theory. It was about historicizing literary theory, and um, there's one other book on the market like that. So I talked to the man who put it together, Hannibal Hamlin, I believe. He's at Ohio State. And he said, on the one hand, it was a very successful book. I got some really good chapters. It got published with a good press. On the other hand, it never got reviewed and it didn't sell many copies. And that's exactly what happened to my literary theory book. So I don't think I've ever gotten a single check for that book. I can't, I don't think so. I'd have to look, but I don't think so. But I paid my daughter to do the cover image for that book, and I paid her to do the cover image for David Bowie and Romanticism. Um, and I did get paid for that book. So, but I just got the one-time payment, gave her a little bit more than 10% of that. Um, and and I gave her the idea for the cover, which I thought was kind of creative and fun. And then the Women in Rock books, sometimes the way it works out is you don't get to pick the cover image. If the book is being published as part of a book series, you usually will have a selection of cover image templates or cover templates, and you get to pick one. I mean, there's maybe 40. I had a lot of options, not more, but I couldn't publish my own cover image for the Women in Rock book. And the Blake and Kierkegaard book, part of a series, so the cover had to match a series. So, the book cover, I mean, it's not the most important thing, but you need to know any additional costs associated with the publication of your book, you as the author are expected to pay. Any potential risk, and this will be written into your contract, okay? You got to know that. Any potential risk associated with violating fair use or someone's copyright it's all on you. Okay, the publisher will not provide legal protection for you. They will not provide payment. It is all on you. Okay, and contracts are very, as you can imagine, very explicit on that point. So you want to think about, what you're doing when you use images. If you use extended quotations from works, the publisher will tell you when you need to seek out rights. Most publishers will have a bunch of author documents for monographs and for edited anthologies, and they will all explain the rules for different things. If you ever publish an edited anthology, it's a book that has a collection. It's a collection of chapters written by different contributors, some of whom are usually the editors. The editor or editors sign the contract for the book and get the royalty payments. And then each individual contributor signs a contract that gives the publisher permission to publish their chapter, but they get no royalty payments. So I just had a book chapter published in Jazz and Literature by Routledge. That wasn't my book, so I didn't get paid for that. I just got a free copy of the book. And I enjoyed being able to write about David Bowie and jazz. I was just kind of annoyed I could only write 3,000 words. But so anthologies are kind of slightly different animals. They have somewhat different rules. But the editors, the people in charge of the book, they're the ones responsible for all of it. Okay. So you need to know going in, any publisher you work with, you'll be responsible for securing rights and the consequences if you don't. Okay. So make sure you cover your rear ends on that one. Okay. Any questions? I'll stop sharing the screen now. And let me see, open the chat. If you have any questions, now's a good time to ask. Are you all good? No questions? Okay, well, I think we can wrap it up. If you think of any questions afterwards, feel free to email me. I'm going to type I get the cursor in there. I'm going to type my email address into the chat window. If you have any questions about a specific contract, maybe that you've been offered. Oh, someone's typing a question. Oh, thank you too. I really appreciate y'all joining us. I hope it was useful, informative to you. And I've typed out my email address here. If you do come up with questions later, feel free to email me. Yeah, then thank you both. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
And to let everybody know, we are going to have all three of these presentations on our upcoming YouTube page. So it will be featured there. You'll be able to go back and listen for your reference. This has been a great resource, and I'm sure it's going to be very helpful to so many people. So we are very grateful for your time and your wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. That's great.